Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Brian, also known as OCD Mindful, back with another video all about OCD. And today we're going to tackle everybody's favorite type of OCD. Not really, everybody's least favorite type of OCD. POCD, or pedophile OCD. Sounds very hands-off. You don't even want to talk about this type of OCD, right? Well, look, I don't want to delve into a whole lot of what is POCD. There's tons of other videos and articles you can go read. If you're suffering from POCD, you know exactly what it is. You have a fear that you are, in fact, a pedophile in some way, shape, or form. You're attracted to children, and you want desperately, more than anything in the world, to disprove it. And this causes, just like every other type of OCD, a ton of distress. But this one can seem a little trickier. Sorry, I got my cat rubbing on my phone. What are you doing, man? This one can seem a little bit trickier because, let's face it, compared to something like HOCD, where you're worried if you're gay, well, it's not illegal to be gay. It's not even frowned upon at this point in time by most people. So if your fear comes true in that case, okay, you accept it and you move on. Maybe you're gay. POCD, though, falls more into a category similar to certain aspects of harm OCD. What if I'm a murderer or I do something that is actually illegal? But this one tends to be even trickier because you're talking about something that most people would objectively say is more immoral. You know, pedophilia really is the ultimate frowned upon crime for most people, not for all people, but for most people. And so today I want to talk about a little bit about what would treatment look like, what the goal of treatment would be, how mindfulness, which is my area of expertise, I am a certified mindfulness instructor, could help benefit your treatment. And so, oh, here he comes. That's Grayson. If you're sitting and watching this POCD video and you're feeling very triggered right now, I hope that made you smile a little bit. So treatment for it is the same as all the treatments for OCD. The most effective treatment that has been researched and studied is exposure and response prevention, in which, yes, we have to basically do the thing you really don't want to do, which is to expose yourself to triggering situations, and then to not do any rituals, so ritual prevention. For many people with OCD, the rituals include avoidant behavior, just not being around kids, avoiding eye contact with kids if you're out in public, changing your whole schedule so you don't have to see kids. So avoidant behavior is probably the big one for most. That's their big compulsion. But there's all kinds of other compulsions. I'm willing to bet everybody who's watching this video who suffers with POCD has spent an obsessive amount of time online just trying to prove to themselves that it's all POCD and that there's no element of truth to it. So Googling, analyzing, trying to figure it out. These are all rituals. And if you have watched any of my other OCD videos, you know that I am a huge proponent of the classical model of ERP and John Grayson's really sticking point on this, and he probably is sort of spends more time discussing how important this concept is than any other therapist that I've heard speak or that I've read, is the acceptance of uncertainty. Okay, now, acceptance of uncertainty for POCD means we are making the choice to live in a world where we don't have certainty that we might be a pedophile. I know how that sounds. I know that is the last thing in the world you want to hear. I know that's the last thing you want to like explain to someone who doesn't have OCD. That like, hey, this is I have POCD. I might be into kids, you know, and I'm accepting uncertainty, and then I'm not going to do any avoidant behavior, and I'm not going to engage in any rituals. I'm going to live my life with uncertainty, and I'm going to move forward, taking the risk that, yeah, maybe I am. Maybe it's in there somewhere, and I'm in denial. Maybe I'm not going to figure it out. I am not going to give you a modicum of reassurance here that, you know, here's what real pedophiles do and here's what people with OCD do, because that's just going to feed right into your rituals. And I apologize. And it's been brought to my attention that there's some people that give me grief on forums because they're like, oh, this guy's too hardcore with the acceptance of uncertainty and he doesn't give you any relief in his videos. Well, I'm sorry. I don't do that to be a jerk. I do that because I know how this treatment works and I want you to get better. That's it. Like, I want you to get your life back. And from someone who has gotten their life back, I know that it's possible. And I know that that means you have to go through some hell to get to heaven, kind of thing. Kind of a cheesy way to put it. But so me personally, I did have a stint of POCD. It never hit me quite as hard as my HOCD, and it didn't really hit me as hard as my ROCD. But since my page here is all about being open and honest and no BS, I'll tell you the truth about how it happened for me. I was doing a senior internship where I was actually working with a group of detectives in the county that I was in college at. And they just had busy work for us to do. It was very boring. A lot of it was like they were taking old printed files and papers and trying to put them onto hard drives. And so like sometimes we'd spend 8 hours literally using a staple remover and taking out staples and then putting papers back in like a lapel folder. But I would sometimes find myself reading the cases because these were interesting cases, and I came across one that was a pedophile case, and there were a bunch of pictures. There were a bunch of pictures of naked kids, boys and girls, and, you know, I'm just reading through the case and looking at the pictures, and I really started to panic. I wasn't sure if I had some sort of groinal response. I actually think that I did, looking back. And, you know, that stuck with me for a while. Here's the thing. It didn't stick with me hard enough that I started doing rituals for it. And I think that was my blessing there, is like I didn't try to undo it or figure it out. And it didn't stick around. Okay, and so now I could create the thought for myself all the time. Maybe I'm a pedophile. I can look at younger people and tell if they're physically attractive. Does that mean I'm a pedophile? One time I had my young niece sitting on my lap, and I feel like I had a groinal response. That triggered me a little bit too. But yeah, it didn't ever flip over the edge into the point where I was doing rituals all the time and trying to disprove it. So, but I do get a lot of questions from people who have found my videos all about POCD and what treatment would entail. And so with exposure and response prevention, what we're really training our brain to do is to open up to this idea that we can't have a certainty on this. We don't need a certainty on it. We can still move forward in our life and be happy with uncertainty. And that by starting to live that way, and by then intentionally doing exposures and making sure we don't do any rituals at all, the brain starts to free up. This problem just doesn't seem as serious anymore. It does not mean that you ever get a certainty. Okay, now I talk about this a lot in my other videos, but if you're coming to this video new because it's a topic that I haven't really discussed, it is very important to know, if you haven't received OCD treatment, that treatment does not mean eventually we figure it out. Okay, successful treatment for POCD doesn't mean at the end of treatment you go, now I know I'm not a pedophile. It doesn't. What successful treatment really would look like is you go, I don't have a certainty if I'm a pedophile or not, and I'm really just not thinking about it anymore. I can create the thought, maybe I'm a pedophile, maybe I want to have sex with kids, and it doesn't trigger the same anxiety response. It doesn't trigger the response, that automatic response that compels me to figure it out or to undo it or to escape it. So that's what successful treatment looks like. And that's what we get through the process of ERP. And so, yeah, this is the hard part for all people with OCD. And even though it may seem like POCD is worse, the truth is the worst type of OCD for anyone is the one that they're dealing with. You know, you might be able to ask objectively people who don't have OCD, like, hey, which one would you rather have? And POCD would probably be on the bottom of the list. Let's face it. If you have POCD, okay, you have one that may not be the most socially acceptable, but the good news is you can treat it. You can get your freedom back. You can get your life back. And so what do some exposures look like? Well, exposures would start with, we want to find exactly what your rituals are and exactly what your fear is. For most people, it's pretty obvious. I just don't want to be a pedophile. I don't want to be a pedophile. I want to know with certainty that I'm not attracted to kids, because if I am a pedophile, then I feel like I'm an immoral monster. I can't live with myself. So from there, we can pinpoint, okay, what are the rituals you're doing? Mostly it's an avoidant thing because they don't want to think about it. 2, it's a figuring out and analyzing thing, trying to solve thing, trying to make sure they know that they're not. Okay, and so OCD is very crafty. It will find little ways to sneak in, and you might be doing rituals you have no idea of. But if you want to try to pinpoint what your rituals are, and if you haven't received treatment, really it's what are you avoiding and what are you doing to try to figure it out, to solve it, to make sure it's not true. And when you can start to look at that, you might find that you're doing dozens, even hundreds of little mini rituals all day long. This could consume your entire day. And so, yeah, this is the hard part of treatment. You pinpoint what your rituals are. You make the choice. You weigh the emotional price tag of doing treatment versus not doing treatment. And I would say to everybody suffering from OCD to do the treatment. Yes, it tends to be harder in the beginning. Giving up your rituals hurts because they do provide you some temporary relief, but they make your condition worse. And so from someone who has gone through several different types of OCD, there's no doubt about it. I would suggest treatment, but it is a personal choice. Whether you want to give up your certainty on this, I would say give up your certainty on it because you already don't have certainty. The fact that you're here watching this video means you don't have certainty. So why not instead embrace uncertainty instead of trying to reject it and get certainty? And then where mindfulness comes in to help aid in your treatment is mindfulness just happens to be much more self-compassionate and caring and kinder. It can bring deeper levels of peace and self-acceptance compared to just doing ERP, which can be really difficult. I mean, ERP is not nice. ERP is getting in the ring with Mike Tyson and just letting him beat the crap out of you, basically until you don't feel pain anymore. That's what ERP is. It's habituation to the thing that causes you so much pain right now. So we couple that with mindfulness practice of self-acceptance, of understanding that you don't have to be any different than the way things are right now, by learning how to embrace whatever feelings come up and sit with them. It may sound a little corny, but as someone who's gone through it, I can say that it's the most important thing in my life is my meditation practice and my practice of informal mindfulness, of learning how to accept thoughts, see them as clouds passing in the sky, to invite feelings to be there exactly as they are instead of running away from them, embracing and accepting things that we don't have control over. Learning how to live your life like this is extremely freeing, and I believe can add such an element to your overall progress for POCD or any type of OCD, that where you might ask someone who just went through ERP, you know, was your success rate, or like where on a scale of 0 to 10, and your POCD was at a 10 at one point, where is it at now? And they might say, oh, it's a 2 or a 1. Well, that would be considered successful treatment. I think with mindfulness, my experience has been my OCD is gone. I even say I have less OCD than people who don't have OCD. I have less anxiety overall. I've learned such amazing coping mechanisms and attitudes for living my life with as much freedom and peace and contentment as possible that I don't think I would have gotten just by doing that harsh treatment of ERP. And so, yeah, POCD is it's a bummer, like all OCDs are, but the good news is you can definitely get better. And cool. I hope that you found some information in here helpful. Of course, I did not get into detail about all the specific treatment strategies, all of the exposures you can do, because the truth is they're different for every single person. So it would be a pretty exhaustive, long list to try to list all of them. But all right. Thanks, guys. My name is Brian. You can shoot me an email if you have any questions at ocdmindful@gmail.com. And all right, keep doing well. See you next time.